Welcome to Disrupting Japan, straight talk from Japan's most successful entrepreneurs. I'm Tim Romero, and thanks for joining me. Today, we're going to sit down with an old friend. Well, actually, she's still a very young friend, but we've known her for years, so Anyway, she's Akiko. Today, we'll be sitting down and catching up with Akiko Naka, CEO and founder of Wantedly. Of course, we'll talk about Wantedly's amazing growth and the IPO that's happened since the last time Akiko came on the show. But there's a much more important story here. And before we get to that, I should let you know that other than a brief overview of Wantedly's business model, this show is all new content and conversations. If you want to understand the crazy ideas and questionable decisions that led to Akiko creating Wantedly, and believe me, that's a story you want to hear, I urge you to listen to the original episode at disruptingjapan.com/show008. I'll have a link up at the site as well. But today, we'll be talking about the best way to sell genuinely new products to large Japanese companies, some practical advice for anyone trying to take their company into overseas markets, including into Japan, and why the most common advice given to aspiring female founders is actually terrible advice. But Akiko tells that story much better than I can. So let's get right to the interview. So I'm sitting here with Akiko Naka, the fearless founder of Wantedly. So thanks for sitting down with me again.
Thank you so much for coming.
It's really great to have you back on again. So much has changed since we sat down over 3 years ago.
Yeah, I can't believe it's been 3 years already.
Well, listen, we had a lot to catch up on, but for my listeners who did not follow my advice during the intro and go back and listen to our old interview, why don't you explain what Wantedly does?
Wantedly is a platform where we match users and companies based on vision and values, not only salary and benefits. When we compare our platform with traditional media, traditional job matching platform, traditional ones values more salary and benefits, but our platform focus on why the company do what they do. So more on value and culture of each company. So that way we believe users and company can meet people casually and that way they can get to know each other better, and then eventually those people can have a long-lasting relationship.
That's a really radical concept in Japanese HR.
Yeah, thank you for saying that.
Well, the whole industry, the whole process is built around very rigid job descriptions and salary scales, and even the resume format is pre-decided.
Yeah, I know. I'm really glad you said that we are very drastic, because every time I explain our platform to foreign writers or reporters, their reaction is like, oh, that's only applicable to Japanese market because Japan's very unique. But actually, Japanese market is very conservative, like you said now. So, yeah.
Well, was there, and does there continue to be pushback from HR people or from the big companies who are saying we don't want to do it this way? Or
in early days, I would say 9 out of 10 pitch we did to HR people was turned down. And most of the pushback we had was HR people would say, Akiko, you don't understand anything about our job. We're so busy. We have to go through so many resumes a day, and we have to do so many interviews. We don't have time to sit down and have a chat with people just checking in and dropping by the office.
It doesn't surprise me that 90% of the prospective customers said no. But the 10% who said, yes, we want to try this, why did they say yes?
Well, I think the only reason is they trusted me. So early users, CEO or people in charge of HR, those people were my friends. And I was begging them to use Wantedly. So Yeah, they probably would try out anything if it wasn't Wantedly.
Okay, but you guys have scaled tremendously since then. So last thing I read, you had over 2.5 million active users a month, and how many employers?
Right now we have around 30,000 clients.
So pitching to your friends is a great first step. But what's driven the rest of the enterprise? Has it just been successful case studies where they've seen other companies succeed? What's driven it?
Right, so it's mostly word of mouth. I mean, even these days, we don't do any outbound, so it's mostly inbound.
Well, have you had to change the image? So when you first started out and during your growth phase, Wantedly was always this kind of quirky outsider startup company. That was the whole image. But as you grow and you scale, can you still keep that as a post-IPO company?
I mean, I guess that a lot of people don't really know that we're public because we're still small. Yeah, I believe that we still have this image of very innovative and providing really cutting-edge technology-oriented products. But yeah, there have been changes we made as a organization-wise. So in early days, we didn't have any salesperson to chase up clients. We only had people to close the deal. But now, so in the past year, we doubled the headcount of salespeople. So I think it's a big change. We have more organized way of selling or closing the deals.
So branding and image-wise, it's still the same. You've just become much more efficient and organized and scalable inside.
Yeah. So early days, I didn't really believe in having a proper sales team because I really thought, building really cool product will bring all the customers. But reality was there's a chasm, and to come over the chasm and go into the main market, we have to have a really strong, human touch.
Enterprise sales in Japan, it's time consuming.
That's very true. Yeah. Yes. These days, there are a few other SaaS products like Money Forward or Smart HR, or also there are lots of foreign products like Slack, Evernote, and Dropbox. So enterprises are getting used to purchasing things without consuming so much time. But still.
But HR is one of the most conservative parts of Japanese organizations. As you got bigger and more established, did you find other companies trying to copy the Wantedly formula?
Right. So I think we saw more copycats in early days. So we started it back in 2012, and I think around by 2015 we had more than like 20 or 30 copycats, not only in Japan but all over Asia. But none of them succeeded. Yeah.
Were the copycats other startups, or were they large recruiting companies trying side projects?
They're both. Yeah. So there are many startups and also large enterprises, but none of them succeeded. I think the reason is for startups, I think people just saw the facts Wantedly is very successful, and when they just wanted to copy the superficial essence, and they just thought they could copy Wantedly, but they were not really truly understand what's the true essence of Wantedly.
So what I want to dig down into this. So like the true essence. So were they like just copying the business model? But what did they miss? Was it a community that they missed? What was missing for most of these copycats?
So I never have really done a in-depth study of those copycats. I didn't really pay much attention, but I guess. So I really value how users visit offices, like casual visits, and I think a lot of startups weren't that persistent in terms of keeping that user experience. So, most of the HR people will say we rather want to have regular, job interview. We don't want to stick to Wantedly's way. And if you don't have strong philosophy, you're gonna just let those HR play by their rules.
Well, that's interesting because I always find that is the critical balance in all startups.
Right.
So you have to believe in your vision strong enough to tell your potential customers no.
Right.
But you also have to listen to your customers to make sure you're building something they actually want.
Yeah, that's true. So we didn't really follow the metrics of like revenue or sales in early days. We just focused on number of users in early days. So we didn't really have to, listen to clients. You know what I mean?
I do, but I think Wantedly existed, it launched at a very unique time in sort of Japanese economic history.
Right.
It was this time where there was this tremendous, and it's still with us, there's a tremendous shortage of engineers, a tremendous shortage of creative professionals, and the big companies simply could not hire them.
Right.
And they were kind of panicking about it. And I mean, Wantedly just fit that niche beautifully.
Maybe.
But I'm curious. So, I mean, obviously a lot of companies have changed their mind at least a little bit in terms of the job interview process. Do you think that's like a permanent shift in culture, or do you think that's just a holdover of, wow, we really need to hire these engineers, so if we have to use this strange process, we'll do it? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm not sure it's a permanent. I think it's, I think HR people adapted to the fact the shortage is really tight. The problem those HR people are having is even they pay money to list their postings to like many other platforms, they can't even meet engineers.
Yeah. Have you seen this kind of softer approach being applied to other jobs, non-engineering, non-creative?
So right now, I think some people misunderstand us that we only focus on startups, but these days, so we have like hospitals, restaurants, clinics, and small government offices in rural areas. So there are many success cases where people are able to hire doctors or like chefs.
Oh, okay, so it is not just that was my mistake too. That was my image has always been engineers and creatives, but
exactly.
Doctors and chefs and
So it's really changed since we talked. Out of I think 30,000, 3,000 to 4,000 are startups, but rest of it are all other SMBs and large enterprises.
I don't know. I find that really encouraging. I really do. Just any time that you see that big a behavioral shift in companies or in people, it's something important is going on. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, I think so. Let me answer your question again. I think I have better answer. Like why we are able to conquer other copycats is because I think we focus more on users rather than like short-term monetization. Yeah, I think especially large enterprises, they do it as an R&D new project. So they want to monetize it within like a short period of time, maybe like 1 year or 2 years. And other startups also started wanting these copycats because it looked like easy money. But instead, we really focused on users' growth and didn't really pay much attention to revenue. Well, I've been really impressed at how Wantedly focuses on the community. Almost every single job site in the world, it's sort of the atomic unit. The basic unit is the resume.
Right.
And you're not just substituting the idea of a user for a resume. There are people that interact at the site, they follow each other, they recommend friends. It really is a community.
Thanks.
But I think that's unique. I haven't seen that in anywhere else, certainly in Japan.
Right, yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Another thing, though, as you've scaled up, you've launched some new products as well, right? You launched Wantedly People, which was the business card scanning.
Yeah. So we have like a two biggest pillar, and I think Wantedly People is another pillar that we really focus and invest in right now. It's automated, AI-supported business card scanning app because business card is huge in Japan, and people always exchange cards before the meeting starts. And since the launch 2 years ago, we already have 3 million users. So that's like the biggest growth we saw in Wantedly's history. So it's surpassing Wantedly Visit, which is a platform to match users in the company.
And you also launched Wantedly Chat.
Yeah, chat has been out for like some time, but we are not, pretty much energy in it right now because Slack is really, really big. And
yeah, they're both really useful products, but it doesn't seem like obvious from a strategic point of view.
Why we're doing what we're doing.
Why you'd suddenly want to be competing with like Sansan on the business card scanning and Slack on the chat. Are you worried it's like a distraction, or is there some really deep synergies that's not obvious?
We always wanted to become a infrastructure for people working, and so we don't really consider ourselves as a HR tech company. We always consider ourselves as a tech company that provides a solution to make people happier, excited about their work. Even from like year one, we kept building another R&D product. Yeah, we kept building every year, and we failed, and eventually we were able to succeed with Monthly People. So yeah, it wasn't like out of blue. We've been keeping trying for 3-4 years.
So is this something sort of like the Google Labs philosophy, where we might see some new products in the future?
Yeah, I think we're going to work on new product maybe once in 3 years or so.
All right.
Yeah.
There's a couple things I want to sort of follow up on from our conversation 3 years ago. Mm-hmm. You were saying that the secret to making change happen in Japan was to do it indirectly.
Right.
To be kind of sneaky about it.
Right. Yeah, maybe I might have mentioned that. Like not too much outspoken about it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Do you find that's still the case? Does that scale up as you get bigger and as you get more attention? Can you still be indirect about your goals, or do you find you have to be more clear, this is what we're trying to do, this is our vision for 5 years from now?
I think the reason why I talked about it was that I think some of the people are really too aggressive, could be sometimes attacking or like sound offensive to people.
Well, let's drill down on that, because aggressive means really different things to different people. So you've certainly been very aggressive in how you've grown Wantedly.
Right, maybe not aggressive, maybe like offensive.
So what's the best way to split that up? It's...
Oh, I think I have the better word. So it's like a big mouth.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. So I don't think Japanese society has like a big tolerance towards like big mouths or...
So people bragging about themselves.
Right. So those people tend to create more enemies. And maybe probably the same thing in the US to some extent. But in Japan, Japanese society has more stronger nature to be offended by people who has big mouths.
I think you're right. And it's not necessarily, even if you're not attacking anyone directly,
right.
If you're praising yourself too strongly,
right.
Some people in Japan will get offended by that. But, I think that actually works against a lot of Japanese companies who are trying to expand overseas.
Yeah, that's true. So
because they don't really, they should brag about themselves a little more.
Exactly. Yeah. I really, truly agree to that as well. So once you step outside Japan and when you're speaking to like foreign media, I think you should change your mode.
Actually, I'm going to tease you a little bit, because I remember this wonderful presentation you gave in Okinawa.
Yeah, I think I know what you're going to say. Yeah, you emailed me about it.
Yeah. No, it was a great presentation talking about your whole journey from starting to IPO and Wantedly, and it was all in Japanese except for one little phrase in English.
Yeah.
Where you said, oh yeah, and I was the youngest woman to IPO in Japan, and I'm kind of proud of that. And then you went right back into Japanese.
That's funny.
So was that instinct? You were just kind of afraid to brag about your own achievements?
Yeah, maybe. You wouldn't say that in Japanese. You sound to like big mouth if you say that in Japanese. And probably wouldn't feel right. But in English, it totally makes sense, because people talk about it all the time, and you have to express your accomplishments, right? So, yeah, I don't know why, but since given, the majority of the audience was foreigners, I thought I just dropped that in English.
Yeah, I thought that was great. I thought that was just perfect.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I wasn't sure it had actually happened until afterwards. I was like, wait, she just changed into English, didn't she?
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah.
So what would your advice be? What's the best way to strike the right balance? Because startup founders have to brag about themselves. They have to let people know about their company and what they're doing. So how do you get the word out in Japan without seeming like you're bragging about yourself?
That's an interesting question. So I think you have to have a record or the facts back up why you're saying that. If you haven't accomplished anything and you just keep bragging about yourself or being a big mouse, and then people's gonna feel offended. So you have to have a certain track record.
Okay. So you can brag a little bit, but just not too much.
Yeah, I think so. Some Japanese people, like sports players, maybe not entrepreneur, but some people are really big mouths, and those people get offended, but at the same time, they get praised by fans as well. But they get lots of attention, and they also get lots of, attacks at the same time. So they have to have a thick skin.
Yeah, I guess it comes down to strategy, I suppose. Mm-hmm. So bragging about yourself in Japan will get you that attention. Mm-hmm. But when things start to go bad,
right? Yeah,
everyone jumps on top of you.
Maybe, yeah. Maybe that's true. Yeah, maybe, yeah.
When you brag like that, you're definitely taking a risk in Japan.
Yeah. That's a very interesting point.
Well, how about on kind of a personal level? Mm-hmm. What did you really have to change about yourself or your way of thinking in growing a company from a tiny little project with a couple of friends into what it is today?
Things I think sometimes that if I could have done better, start over again. One of the things is I could have burned more cash in early days. We were focusing on users, so we weren't really aggressive about acquiring clients, and that's a good thing and a bad thing. So good thing is what we talked about earlier, that we were able to educate clients, and we were only focused on clients that were willing to work with us. So we could create this culture or atmosphere on the platform, and they were able to scale later on. But at the same time, I feel like if we were a bit more aggressive about burning cash, maybe do more marketing or hire more people faster. At this moment, I could have doubled the size of revenue or headcounts. So, and time is a very precious thing.
What held you back?
So I didn't know anything about startups back then. I'm not sure, but back then I had this weird idea that the sales is not good. Salespeople, when you have too many salespeople, that will affect really badly to organization. And having only engineers is a cool culture. And also, I had this idea that marketing, paid marketing, is vicious, and you should focus on just acquiring users organically. And I felt like acquire users, even if you pay and if you acquire users, those users are not loyal, so they will go away anyway. So I don't know, I had this preconception that marketing is bad, or having sales oriented organization is bad, and I don't know why, but
well, no, actually that's not that surprising. A lot of startup founders, maybe most startup founders that come from either an engineering or creative background, have that same preconception about sales and marketing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's probably because most of the experiences they've had with salesmen and marketing have not been pleasant.
Yeah, maybe that's true. Yeah. So that's something that I learned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When we talked before, you talked about the two types of growth: the 0 to 1 growth,
right.
and the 1 to 10 growth. Mm-hmm. So 0 to 1 being creating something from nothing, and 1 to 10 being taking that something and growing it tenfold. And before, you were saying that you were always really attracted to the 0 to 1.
Right.
And that's why you left Goldman, and that's why you were excited about Wantedly in your previous attempts as well. But now you're sort of in a 1 to 10 phase. So how's it different? And how have you adapted?
So it's very different. So I spend my time most of the time thinking about organization, our team, and thinking about another project that we might invest in down the road. So things has changed from since we last talked, and I think that was 2015, was it?
Sounds right, yeah.
So that was in between being a very small startup and starting to scale. So back then, I really had to focus on organization, hire the right person, making sure people understand our culture. But now, because we have more leadership, I can spend some time more on thinking about new products. Actually, one of the people, the new products, I am the product owner. So I have weekly meeting with the team, and I have a bi-weekly meeting, a product review, and I check all the products which is rolling out. I don't do that for visit. Right now, it's a mixture of starting up and also scaling the team. So it's becoming more fun, I think, compared with 2015.
Okay, so it is that balance. The Wantedly as a corporation is in that 1 to 10 phase, but you still have the Wantedly people and perhaps future projects as well, going from 0 to 1 at the same time.
Right. So that's probably the change, yeah.
Let's see, last time we spoke, you were just getting ready to enter the Singapore market.
Right.
How has it gone?
It's been great. So the Singapore team is making revenue and we have over 1,000 customers.
Did you follow the same basic strategy and plan you did in Japan?
That's what we're trying to do. And I think we failed so many times in terms of global expansion in the past. And I think the biggest mistake I made was to hire someone in Japan and then send that person to those local area. Was the biggest mistake. The local things like customs, cultures, people's taste, only local people knows.
Yeah, I can imagine, especially a company like Wantedly where the community is so important.
Right.
If someone is moving to a new country, it's going to be that much harder for him to, he'd be building something from scratch.
That's true.
Now, did the clients in Singapore and Hong Kong and Berlin, did they have the same reaction as the Japanese clients did?
Exactly,
saying, what is this? Why are we going to,
Yeah. I think they are getting the same pushback as we had in Japan. And the funny thing is, people in Hong Kong and Singapore and Berlin think it only worked in Japan because Japan is very unique and Japan is very different, but that's not the case and you only understand that. So I'm really grateful that you know that it's not because it worked in Japan because Japan's unique. It's because we pursued really hard. Yeah, so I think we have to be persistent in other countries as well.
That's great. Let's talk a bit about Japan.
Okay.
You get profiled endlessly as like a woman entrepreneur in Japan.
That's funny.
And what'd you do?
Yeah.
And I promise I'm not going to ask you questions about what it's like to be a woman entrepreneur. But I am going to ask you, why do you think the media is so fascinated with it? Because there are a lot of women entrepreneurs in Japan.
Yeah, but the thing is, I still get the same questions from Western reporters as well.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So it's not just a Japan thing?
It's not only a Japan thing, I think.
When you talk to the reporters, are they holding you up like a role model for younger girls, or are they holding you up as like a strange creature, as some kind of a panda or...
I don't know. I think, the physical features are really easily distinguished, like your color of your skin or how your face is structured, or, that makes your people ask that question easily, I guess. Yeah, my guess is people are not really thinking much about, the background of the question.
So
they just
lack of research on the reporter's part.
Yeah. I think everybody has like this question that person gets asked like 1,000 times throughout their lives. Like, for example, if the person has, I don't know, twin sister, and then that person gets asked about the twin like all the time, or if the person looked like, mixed, like half, and then the person gets asked every time like, oh, who's your parents and so on. So probably the same thing. Like the person asking the question isn't really thinking in depth.
They're just jumping on an obvious question.
Yeah, it's just like, exactly. It's like reactionable, kind of easy, the first thing in your mind kind of question.
Do you think it's, because I noticed there's a lot of media attention around women entrepreneurs in Japan, but there's also a lot of like seminars specifically targeted at women startup founders. And do you think that's a good thing, a bad thing, a neutral, doesn't really matter thing?
In general, I think that it's a bad thing.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. I mean, like women's gathering together and inventing products that only focuses on women is narrowing their potential down. And yeah, in my opinion, I think people should focus more on what they build instead of like who they are. Yeah.
No, that's a really interesting perspective. I hadn't quite thought of it that way. So in one hand, it might seem like it's a supportive environment, but on the other hand, you're sort of limiting yourself by accepting that.
Yeah, by branding yourself as a female entrepreneur, and I don't know. And most of the cases, when you go to those seminars, people tell you that you should create a product that focuses on women because you're a woman and you have better understanding of those, people. And yeah.
Yeah, that sounds like bad advice. Off the top of my head, that does sound like bad advice.
Yeah, I agree. Or even if those people don't get that kind of advice, they tend to or even end up providing services that only focus on women. Because that's the only sell that they can do, that fact that they're women.
Yeah, and that's going to be extremely limiting.
I know, yeah. So I always wanted to make Wantedly known as a tech company. Didn't want to be like known as a company that founded by a female entrepreneur.
Well, listen, Aki, before we wrap up, I want to ask you my magic wand question.
Okay.
And that is, if I gave you a magic wand and I told you that you could change one thing about Japan, anything at all, the education system, the legal system, the way people think about risk, anything at all, to make things better for startups and innovation in Japan, what would you change?
Okay, so my theory of why Japanese startups are not as vibrant as US or China is because the regulation is too strong, especially around like labor. Because of the regulation that was made like 100 years ago, the Japanese workers is protected. It's a good thing, but at the same time, it's, I think, blocking people to move from industry to industry.
So do you mean like specifically the ability to fire unproductive employees, or what
Right,
specifically is?
Yeah. So termination of contracts. That really prohibits companies from starting up really fast. I think in the US, the concept of quitting or being let go is not a really bad thing. It's not like end of the world. You can still look for another opportunity, and that way
Well, in the US, you sort of expect it.
Yeah. Also, always there is a pros and cons, and having that liquidity of labor market maybe makes more stressful. Disparity is maybe like becomes big in US, but at the same time, the pros are, that allows companies to start up really fast.
So you'd use your magic wand to rewrite that part of Japanese labor law. But what's interesting is, if I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying the advantage is not just the ability to get rid of unproductive employees. The advantage is that would create a more mobile workforce for everybody.
Right. So I think labor liquidity is the thing that I want to create more. People who want to stay at one company can choose to stay so, but I think there's too much pressure in the society that people, who has family or house loan, they cannot make decision to take risks and join small startups.
Yeah, I'm curious because there has been a shift in that in the millennial generation.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if it's a shift in attitude or just a shift in the reality of the economic environment. So right now, if you're in your 20s, early 30s, and you're a creative, you're an engineer, it's very easy to change jobs.
Yeah, sure. Maybe easy for engineers, yeah. But I think majority of people, like non-engineer jobs people, like sales or I don't know, and those talented people, I don't have this strong peer pressure or social pressure. They cannot move from where they are.
Yeah, so I guess it's maybe the real career track employees still don't have that job mobility. It's the engineers, the creative, the kind of the workers in the company have the mobility, but it hasn't filtered up yet, has it?
No, that's my opinion as well. And I think if labor liquidity gets high, it gets easier for talented people to make their salary go up.
Do you see that possibly changing? Do you see sometime in the near future a 50-year-old VP of sales using Wantedly to look for a new job? We don't have those people on the platform today, but do you see that changing in Japan? Could that happen?
Yeah, I hope to see. But I think, having more liquidity in the labor market solves many problems. I think one of the reasons why Japan is not really attractive market for foreign workers is because the salary is very low, and that's because it's not really easy to terminate the contract. So that way the company have to burden the risk of hiring the person eternally. Yeah.
But it also, it doesn't incentivize the employees to improve their skills.
Exactly, yeah, true. I agree.
even if you become an absolute brilliant programmer, you're not necessarily going to advance in the company any faster than a kind of okay programmer.
Yeah, I agree. So the structure we have in Japan right now these days is not really fit to our, what we have today.
Yeah.
The structure was built like many, many years ago.
But it has changed for the millennial, the early 30s, 20s age seems to be pretty mobile.
Right. Like engineers and designers, those people that you just mentioned. Yeah, that's true, yeah.
So maybe we'll see it spread.
Hopefully. Yeah, that's maybe one thing if I can change, yeah.
Aki, listen, thank you so much for sitting down with me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. It was fun chatting with you again.
We'll have to do it again soon.
And we're back. One of the most interesting things that Akiko brought up was the difference between being aggressive and being offensive. Now, this is a very fine line that all startups need to walk. On one hand, you need to have confidence in yourself and in your product. But on the other, bragging about yourself doesn't usually win you friends or business in Japan. This is something that so many foreign startups coming into Japan get wrong, especially American startups. I don't know how many times I've seen people fly into a week of meetings which they brag and bluster their way through, and then they wonder why no business materializes. The best and the most effective way, of course, is to get other people talking about how great you are, particularly if those people are existing customers. As Akiko's experience shows, even for high-tech, new economy startups, word of mouth and personal trust still count for a lot in Japan. Akiko's advice to female founders seems like good advice. But hey, I'm in no position to give or receive advice about how to navigate the world of startups as a female founder, so I won't add anything to Aki's thoughts on that particular point. But I will extrapolate her comments so I can say something to founders in general. Male or female, don't focus on who you are. Focus on your customers and their problems. You might be able to get some attention based on who you are, and that's great. But never forget that everything you do needs to be focused not on you, but on the people and the companies that use your product and service and who believe in your vision. In the end, it's never about you. It's about your customers. If you want to talk about finding a job in Japan or creating a startup that really fits your vision, Akiko and I would love to hear from you. So come by disruptingjapan.com/show137 and tell us about it. And by the way, after every show, I get a ton of emails asking for introductions or the guest's contact info. Now, obviously, other than the info our guests share at the site, I can't do that. However, most of our guests have been really good about answering questions asked to them in the comments section. So if you want to know more or dig deeper, drop by disruptingjapan.com and leave a comment, and we'll talk again there. But most of all, thanks for listening, and thank you for letting people interested in Japanese startups know about the show. I'm Tim Romero, and thanks for listening to Disrupting Japan.